Right, I'm just completing the ivory for these walls areas, and we'll add to that some 182. Now, as it's a wall, what we want to do is to try to create some texture. So where I've used the shaper, colour shaper, I'm not actually going to do that now. I'm going to sort of try to create a texture on the wall. First of all, quite light. Now, just here, I'm just going to make it just a little darker. There. There we get a nice corner. Now, just here, where we have 3 of the similar kind of tones. So what we've got to do now is to make this a little darker. Because the light's coming from this direction, we can afford to be a little darker just on this wall. That gives us quite a nice edge against this building, and then we can see very clearly an edge there. Now what I'm going to do there as well is just put on the very top of the wall here a little white. You see how immediately that separates it out, just a little more depth over that side, and now we've got a really good combination there. Okay, and we go all the way down to the bottom, and what I've done at the bottom there, I've just put a little bit of white on the end, which again separates it off. You see how much nice that is? Now, if that's not strong enough, as I don't think it is, what we now can do is put just a little bit of... Now, I'm using the 177, the dark brown for this, just to create just a little more depth. Very light touch. You don't want to put this too strong. But you see how nice that actually looks, doesn't it? Just. Okay. Now, on this one, I'm pretty happy. Maybe we can maybe just touch it in there just a little bit, but this end now, because it's in the shadow, I'm going to put an edge down there, and then we'll use a 182 just to make it just a little stronger, just on that, because that's going to be in the shadow, and so is that, so that can be a little stronger. It's all about adjustments, isn't it? Lovely. That's fine. Now, we'll just assume that this wall goes up to that building. And if that's the case, we want just a little shadow on this. So I'm going to use a 273 on that. And then just a little touch of white on the top of that. So we give ourselves a nice contrast. Good. Okay, and we're going to a little bit of contrast here, because once again, this will be behind the wall. Do the same thing. Once again, it's this adjustment. Now this is facing. What we've got here is the light's hitting this wall, that wall, in front of there, and it's also hitting this one, but just there. Now we want that to be darker. So we'll set that up, and then develop this. Okay, that's good. And we can also put a little bit of light on the top edge of that as well. There we are. And if we then just give ourselves this wall that goes down here, just a little more depth. Terrific. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put some little bits of a few features in. I'm going to put some dark green just here, because I'm going to put some shadow on the pathway in a little while, and I also want some here. You can always put things like this in, which is, it adds colour and interest, and we could even have that climbing up the wall a little bit, and even overshadowing a little bit there. You see, there's little things you can do to give yourself a little bit more interesting features, and then you make it a little darker with the brown 177. That's nice. And I think we can also use here the 283, which is the reddish darkish reddish ochre. Burnt sienna is actually the name. And we can add, you know, just put a little bit of interesting. Now that would be a little darker, so we can make that definitely dark because that's a shadow. And a bit of interest in there. I think that looks good. I may well have to, I'm going to probably sharpen the white and put that on there in a minute, but let me just continue with this shadow I was talking about. Now we can put a little bit of shadow in, and then that's as far as we want to go. And we can put some, a little bit of, it's nice just to make pathways and areas like that just a little bit more interesting, and we'll have a little bit of shadow there which we can then use our 181 just to put a little bit of extra shadow on there. Come down here so we get separation. A bit of white just to fade that back slightly in there. But I think that looks quite nice now, just maybe a little bit more depth in there. You see how that's changed the whole thing, and I really, really like that now. Put a little bit of extra weight on that edge and in there as well. Might as well finish this all off, just in case we forget and don't go back to it. But now, by darkening that, we have this edge here better, and we can have a little bit of interest down here. Okay, now this other wall we're nearly finished. You see, as soon as you put that on, you have to separate those two out, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that in a minute. But I'll bring this along here, all the way along. There. Now, because this is a harbour wall, we can be just a little bit, make it just a little more interesting. A little bit of ivory in there on the top edge, like that. And we've already got the white here, so that's okay, that separates it. But at the bottom, we want some green. Now I'm going to use the 168 green, as opposed to the 174 which I used up here, and that can go down on the bottom. It makes it look a little bit more interesting, I think. And what is obvious now is that edge needs to be a little darker, so I'm going to put a little bit more blue in there to make that stand out a little more. And we can always bring just a little bit of white along the top edge of that to give us the contrast we need. In fact, I can make it just a little stronger. So that's going to be white there. We're going to make that white in a minute. That looks good. Now we want to make it a little darker, and I'm going to use the 283 for that. Make it a bit more interesting there. I don't know whether I want it a lot darker than that. Yes, perhaps I'll use the green. This is a 174, the darker green. Now I like that. I'm not going to blend this, I'm just going to leave it. That's good. And we'll do the same thing on that when we get to it. But we're still a little way off yet. Now I was talking about this area, so what I'm going to do is make that just a little darker behind, I think. And then we'll have the harbour wall there. Top of the wall just a little lighter. And when I sharpen that up, I'll make that a little bit better. But that looks good to me. Great. Righto. Just a little tidying up job. use, because this is water behind and quite a distance away, we want to just blend it out so we don't have it textured. Good. Now I'm going to leave this for the moment because I'm going to deal with the lighthouse. Now the lighthouse is going to be white. It's going to be white all over, but we're going to have to put shadow on this side in a minute. But let's start off with the white there and white there. But what I like the idea of making it maybe a little bit of pink on the top of there. Not a lot of room there, but just enough to. And then I'm going to use the 191, which is the dark red, darker red. That was 131 I used to start with, and we can just use a little touch of white in there, just to lighten that side of it. And if we're really going to be fussy, then I can use a 192, which is Indian red, just to put a bit of extra strength, like that. And what I was talking about putting shadowing on this side, so we want to. This is 273, and same down there. You see, now we have the light coming from this direction, so that looks good. Now just on this edge, I'm going to make that just a little stronger. Just a little bit stronger with the Payne's grey. It's 181. And in there as well. And we'll have a top knot up there. It looks good. What we'll have is a little bit balcony that goes round there. You need a sharp pencil for this, folks. Only a suggestion, but that looks rather nice, doesn't it? Now we need to come down here. Because we've got the white underneath there, it's not going to register quite as strong as it would do if we hadn't done that. That looks good to me. Now we could use a colour shaper, but I'm not going to. I'm going to go back in with the white and use that as my blender. So what I'll do is I'll just make sure it's nice and strong there, and then it fades as we get to the darker part. Good. And just to make sure that's really strong on this side, we just use the 181 again, just to bring the very edge of it a little bit darker. That looks nice. And we'll just put a window here, a little window there, and another window there. Like that. Great. I like that. I think that looks good. What we can also do here is, you see that the difference between the edge of the lighthouse there and the water isn't a great deal. So if we were just to put a little bit of white on the water there, just a touch, a smidgen, you see how much suddenly it jumps up, doesn't it? Good. I don't think we need particularly doing any there. I think we're happy with that. Happy with the lighthouse. That's stunning. Works well. Now let's look at. Might as well go all the way along here. Let's just use this next. This is the harbour wall, the outer harbour wall. So what we're going to do there, instead of, I'm going to use just a little bit of ivory colour, but I don't want too much of it because I want this to be registered a little stronger. And a little bit of ivory in there, and then we go in with our 182 again, which we've used. Now I'm actually going to use my colour shaper, and I haven't done on this other one, but here I just want to make it just a touch smoother, because I'm going to put quite a lot more colour on here. Good, that's it. Now we're going to just add just a touch more, because although I'll smooth it the one time, I shan't be doing it again. So from now onwards there's no more using the colour shaper. I'm going to use 283 now. And what we want to do is to make this forward harbour wall stand away. So we make it a little darker behind. Shouldn't have any trouble following this. And again, I'll just show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make that light there eventually when we get to it, which means we can make it dark behind it. However, just there I'm going to make that very dark, so that needs to be put in. I think you're getting the idea by now how this is working. Now I'm going to use green, which is 168, and then the darker green right at the bottom there. Lovely. We can just put perhaps a little bit of the 177 in. This is the dark. I don't want too much because I really do want that to be strong. So I think we'll leave it at that. But it's dark enough. Now just there, needs to be a little darker. Good. You see how that is all now really working out nicely for us. All about light and dark as we run through, and how textured that is. That's good. If you feel, as I'm looking at it now, thinking maybe you could do it just a little less textured, just touch your colour shaper on. Don't rub it, because it will keep it all separated that way. But it just makes it make just that little bit nicer along the top. I love that. That's superb. Now we might as well, as we've gone as far as this, do this bit. So I'll come close, because this is just a little more tricky, but it's very interesting. I'll come closer when I do that for you. Right, let's get on with this. First of all, quite a strong ivory on this section of wall. We leave that for the moment, because that gives us the area above. Now what we're going to do here, we're going to make this a little stronger. I'm using ivory, the ochre now, which is 183, just a bit of 183. No ivory underneath here, and no ivory underneath here, because this is going to be a bit darker. I'm not really 100% sure what this is, but I'm going to make it look interesting anyway. Now over here we're directly going to put some green on. So these are different base colours that we've used before. Normally I would put something underneath here, but I'm not going to in this case. I'm just going to use a lot of raw colour. Same up here, some green up here. Okay, and then we use the ochre again in here to create a little bit of interest. Now on top of that, we switch to the 182, which we've used before, and here we need to darken this a little bit. more, but creeping a little bit of texture in it. Okay, good. And now I'm going to use a grey. I'm using 273 grey. Put a little bit of grey in. Not worrying about this forward area at the moment. I'm just concerned really with this area behind, because I'm just putting in colour. Then we're going to start putting some detail on it, and then it'll look stunning. You may not think that at the moment, but it will do. Just put a bit of colour in there. Now what I'm going to do now is just going to use the colour shaper. Again, don't press too hard. All we're doing is just pushing the colour in. Now you can see that between here and here, the difference. Now that really sets our base colour up. Now before we complete that section, I'm going to use 174, which is the green, just to infill really, and make those greens a little stronger in places. Because when I start putting the dark colours on in a minute, you don't want it to be too solid down there, but we want it to overspill. The idea. Great. Okay. Now the next colour, which is the important colour really, is going to be 177. Now I'm jumping between the lighter colours and the dark colour here, because we want it to be very strong here. So I would have normally used 283 here, but I just wanted to make sure that we got the strength. Now just here we've got, like, I don't know whether it's a fence, I'm not quite sure what it is, but we'll put it in anyway. It doesn't really matter, folks, what it is, as long as it looks as though it's something and meant to be there. Now having done that, we can then use the dark just to filter through and add a little bit of extra. You see that? Same thing over here, just a touch. And in here we can use the same colour. I'm going to go in with a darker colour in a minute with the 181 here, which will be the final colour I'm going to use. Can you see what it is yet? No, neither can I. But then again, I don't particularly want to. Now this is orange, because I wanted some colour in here. It's a little bit of colour, making it look a little bit more interesting. Now we're going to darken with 181. This is the darkest colour we have. I've already done that we have, so it's very strong shadows on this side. And I can also darken some of that green up. And this flitting about that I'm doing is just really, all I'm doing, folks, is making it more interesting. See that? And then we can just go a little bit of green. Now, the green now, what I'm doing, you can see I can twiddle the pencil. You just put some more green in, and it just makes it just that little bit stronger. There you go. And that is as far as I want to take it. That's as good as we want to be. So let's finish off down here. Now this is going to be the same as that one over there. So we go in with our ochre. My 182. Here we are. 182. And 182. Keeping it light on the top. A little bit of grey, I think, here. We'll just change it slightly by putting a bit of grey in. I did put grey over here, but it's nice to do something different. That's good. And a little bit of green. Less is more. in the case like this. You don't want it any darker than, well, maybe just a little bit of, instead of the 177 which I used up there, I'm going to use the 283. We haven't used it down there. That's absolutely fine. Now, while I've got you here, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you something else. And what I'm using now is the cool grey, the 230. And that's going to go in all the way down to the bottom. I'll just do this section because then I'll do the remaining water in this in a little while, but that's what I'm looking for at the moment. When you do that, just rub it with your finger so that you get a nice colour. And it's not a bad idea just to put just a little bit of white just there as well. Just there, because we're going to put some colours reflecting back into the water. And it's really quite a nice idea. And it's also up here too, would be an idea to put some white in. Got a nice sharp white, so use a sharp white just to put a little, and also that there. You see, it just picks everything up. Now I'm going to continue the grey on the water all the way through, and then we can start putting the remaining areas over here. And this is going to be interesting, the wall and eventually the boats. Nearly finished. I've nearly finished the water now. It's a bit like the sky when I said don't blow the dust off, because you can use it. Good idea to use your finger to blend this in with. However, when you get to the difficult bits like around those boats, switch to your colour shaper. The 230 is a very good soft blending colour, so it will blend in beautifully, as you can see. Okay, now I'm not going to do the water yet because we'll be doing reflections, but I just wanted it in so it gives us an idea and a contrast between what we're going to do next. And the thing we're going to do now is build up those. Now that would be a little darker, so I'm just going to do similar to what I did here on the harbour wall above. It's got to be a little darker as we're getting a little closer, but what we've got to do really is to put the white down here for the moment, and we can put some of the white. Actually, could in fact I might as well do it. It's a good idea to, when you're butting up against something, which we are now, it's a good idea to put it in, and again that can just be blended lightly with your finger. Okay, no need to do any more of that, except I have seen that I didn't go up close enough to the water, to the wall here. That's good. It's contrast, I can see the differences between these colours now. Okay, where was I? The ivory, wasn't I? Putting the ivory in here, and a bit more in ivory in here. I haven't overdone that because I want to use the other colours. So this is the yellow ochre, 183. Put that in. Perhaps we'll do them together. And this isn't going to take long, so you might as well see me finish this off. Start off the way I'm doing it now by putting the ochre in. That was the 183 before, but now we've got the 182. We want a distinct difference now between the harbour wall and the pathway above. I choose this picture because it's one of my workshop packs, in fact, and it still is one of my workshop packs, but it's never been done on video. So I thought, what an excellent opportunity I have of doing a very simplistic picture that everybody can do, and showing you how easy pastel pencils are to use. Anyway, that's got that first of all. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to put some grey in, because one of the things we've got to think about is neutralising the colour, and the grey is a great colour for that. It stops the colour from being too bright. In fact, we can put quite a lot of colour in it now, by having put the grey in. Yes, happy with that. Now, as before, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly blend these colours in. In other words, not rub too hard, so we still keep the individual colours there, but we make them, push them into the paper a bit more, so we get a good base, and that allows us then to put the colours back in again that I want to, and we keep that. Okay, let's have a look at this now. We want some green. Green largely at the bottom here, because this is where the water would be on higher tide, would come up and splash in and create that lovely tone we get at the bottom of water, over walls, harbour walls particularly. Lovely, I like it. We need a bit darker. Now we need it darker nearly at the bottom, so let's just start there with our, that was 168, the other green, and this is 174. We've got lots of other greens in our range, but I'm only keeping this to a minimal this time. I don't want to go too mad. Now you see what I'm doing is I'm edging it up rather than just applying it willy-nilly and making it look a little bit more natural. The reason I'm going around that is because, in fact, it might be a good idea to put that in. This is white sail that's rolled up. So putting it in now, I won't go over it, will I? Good. Now it's already looking nice, but we want it to look nicer. So now I'm going to use 283. Let's come down with a little bit of an edge on there. 283. And here I'm going to be a bit more fussy about where I put it. Not all over. Just in places and spots. Make it look more interesting. There's maybe an idea to crystallise that little bit. A little more there, so that's better. Okay, now I'm going to use the 177, and I'm going to just twist this round, folks. Now the reason I'm doing it, because what I'm going to do is going to go from here, slightly different, not all the way down, but just in spots where we have sort of runs, and I think I might use 283 as well. That was 177, which is the dark brown. This is 283, and also while we're there, let's have a little bit of orange as well. This is 109. You know, sometimes when you turn a picture on its head, like I'm doing now, you actually don't see quite exactly what you're doing. It's not until you turn it around like that that you think, wow, I like that. And I do. So that is absolutely fine. Now what I'm going to do now is just going to do, again, just tap it in without rubbing. Just tap the colour shaper or the paper blender, whichever you're using. And that creates a stunning effect. I like it. Just a little bit more extra strength there. Come down with the white again, making sure that we've got, and I think 2, just right on that edge, just pick out the white a bit more, you can make it a little stronger. But that is as strong as we want it. That's fine. When it works, you leave it alone. Just make a little bit more strength there with my 283 and 177. just to give it, and then we can bring some grey into the pathway, even down there. You see, it makes it more believable, doesn't it? So happy with that. Now I think we ought to be looking at the boats, and this is really interesting because what we want to do here, I think what I'll do is I'll bring down some of the water halfway down to about here. So let me do that now. And what we're going to do now is put a little bit of blue in there, and that will stretch down. But we only want to go as far as here, so we'll leave that at the moment like that. And we want a little bit of the ochre in, which is the yellow ochre. No, not the yellow ochre. The 182 that we used there, and that can come back in there as well. That's just the harbour wall that we're reflecting, and some white. And then we use a colour shaper. Now, just take the colour off of there and use the colour shaper. You can either go this way, which may be a good idea to do, and then it creates. What it will do, it will go into the that's a little bit strong, that blue there. Let's just weaken that down a little bit. Yes, excellent. Yes, it goes into the grey base that we've got, so that looks good. Now just here we use 182 again, but here we want it just a little stronger because we want to bring down the harbour wall there, like that. Now the reason I've done this is because I'm going to build these boats up here behind that, and the same thing would apply here. Like that. We can also then darken it slightly because we've got this a little bit darker there. And just here we can put that in, which is the reflecting and use the colour shaper. I'm preferring to do it like this actually. You can still do it that way, but it's really better to. Now having done that, we can then look at the wall and make slight adjustments, because I think we could do that a little bit darker there, which means we've got to put just a little bit more dark there. Keep the white edge. You see, I've got a white edge there. It really looks nice. And this can then be. Now I can't really bring this down because we need to do a bit more of it. So that will be done later on. But that will be the end of the wall there, and then it will be. Okay, let's just do this bit over here. Just blend that in, and that can have some green in because we. And remember the white edge. Now I didn't put it on here, but I'm going to now. And what we can do here, we can experiment a little bit. If you flick that down, you get quite a nice effect. Okay. Just a little bit of white in there, a little bit of blue in there. That'd be it. That'd be fine. For the moment, leave it at that, because now I want to show you the boat. Now this little boat here is going to have a white top. You have to use sharp pencils here to create the effect you want, and we want it to be red. And when you use red, it's probably a good idea to put it directly onto the paper. And this is 191 I'm using. Like that. Now, I haven't put any people in this picture at the moment, but I'm going to show you later on how we do that. And the boat behind, I think we'll have a green boat behind. We'll have a green one. But the reason I mention people, there's one on here, which we're going to do in the bow. Now what we can do here, just use a dark, that was the 168, but we want to make a little bit of shadow in it, so we put just a little touch of dark green on, and then just here we want 181, just to make it just a little bit stronger. Okay, so there's the boat behind. The one in front, we've got a colour which we're using, which is the dark 192. So we put 192 there to give us a little shadow, and then bring that shadow around a little bit stronger, like that. We want, this is a 181. Now I'm using 181. This is, I did the same way I did with the Lighthouse, just bring a little bit of colour on the top, a little bit of detail on the top of the boat there, and in here, like that. Great. And we then use our white just to pick it up. Perfect. Now the little chappy, I'm going to put him in. I'm going to use a dark 181 again. You just put basically the little head, little shoulder, and the little arm. That's all you do. Don't go mad. Don't be silly about it. Don't be. You could put. I could look at that and put a little bit of blue maybe on this jacket. Make it look a little better. That's good enough. That's lovely. So that's one boat done. Or two boats done now. I've got that boat done as well. I'm pretty happy with that. So let's do a few more here. Let's do, I've got a blue one here. Now we start with blue. Put this directly onto the paper, don't put any undercolours on. It makes them nice and bright that way. And there's a blue. And what we'll have is a white boat here. Well, it's sometimes nice to have something a little lighter because you can make it white inside. And we can also put some white on this now. And we can use our 181 to give a little bit of depth. Lovely. Use 181 here too, and here. You see, when you look at me doing this, you think, gosh, he's making it too dark, but you realise, of course, you can bring the white back, which is what I'm going to be doing in a minute. So you can darken it like that, and then you just bring the white back either to shade, like I'm going to do there, and even in there, just a little bit of white in there, which looks rather good. And this is a little rowboat, so we can have you can do whatever you want here, but basically that gives you very, very simple structure. Okay, right, I'll come closer for the next two because you can see these close up. They're bigger and there's a lot more detail to them. Now we're going to do these two boats. First thing I'm going to be doing is putting this mast in. Now, what I've done is put the bottom and the top in. Now, you're not going to get that straight unless you use a rule. Now, generally speaking, I don't use a rule. The only time I use it is on masts of ships or horizon lines. But you really have got to use a rule here. Now, I'm using a very sharp 181. Lovely. It looks a bit thick, doesn't it? But actually it isn't if you look at it into relation to the rest of it. Now I'm just putting the white back in again here. The white that's folded up sail. Okay. Then what we do is we tie it down. We've also got the end of the mast here. Okay, like that. Okay. Now the boat itself, we can have white again, and we have a little white deck. Again, need a sharp pencil for this, and a little white going down there. And then we want red. Let me just move this up again and make sure you don't miss any of this. Using the red 181 again, directly onto the paper. Don't put an undercoat under it, otherwise you'll never get it dark enough. Great, now I'm going to use 192, which is the dark Indian red. And that will give me my shadow. You can see, and it works well. I've lost the. Let me just sharpen my white for a second, folks, because what I've got to do now is put that line in again, which I've just got rid of. But you do need a sharp point for this, so rather than break off again, I've just sharpened it up now. It just gives me that little bit of extra. That's great. This is very small, this boat. Now what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put some grey in it. This is 1273 grey, and also in here. And then 181, just to put a little bit of extra punch in. Like that. I don't think we can do any more. I think that's just run a line round, a little bit of strength there because it's showing the shadow in the front, and I'll just put a little bit of detail on there, like that. Now, what I'm also going to do, I've just introduced for the first time a little bit of black, because I want that to be a bit darker. Now I could use 181, which is what I've used before, but black will be that this is a little bit stronger for me. And if you link it with the red, you get a better tone. That's lovely. Okay, now I've got that in, I can just push just a little harder with the 191, and we get a very nice finish. Okay, now the one in the front is going to be white again, but in fact I think I might make it white with some cream in it. Let's start with white. You may think there's an awful lot of white, but boats, generally speaking, do tend to be a lot of white boats, so it's not foreign a little bit inside there. We've got to work hard on this. I'm going to put some cream. As I said, I'm going to put some ivory in, so I'm going to make it a little creamier. Okay, so now we use the grey. This is 273 grey, and we put some tone in there, and then along the bottom, making it look a little more natural looking, dirty looking, scruffy looking. That's the inside of the boat there. Not a lot of room there to do this, but you see it works well. Now I'm going to use 181 here. That'll give me the extra weight. Okay, now along the bottom, grade up. The idea is to try to get the roundness and the shape of the boat, if we can, by doing that. Get the idea? Just inside here, a little darker. What we're going to have to do is to also add a little bit of extra weight to there, because it won't show up otherwise. Good. Now I've managed to retain the white inside there. More white going in here. When you put the white back on, you see it acts like a blender, as I've showed you before. That's good. Now I think we can put some colour in it. This is 182. And I'm going to touch a little bit of black in here as well. That adds, you can see, quite a lot of punch, like that. All this will look better when we get the water in. And I think a brown. Now, what brown shall I use? I think I'll use, yes, I'll use the 177. No, I like that. Yeah, it suggests the design of the boat there, I think. Just to give it, that's lovely. I like that. Don't think we can do any more. I think that is absolutely as far as we can take it. I might just do a little titivation here and there off camera. Just put a little bit more weight on here. But I like that. I think that's great. Now folks, we are nearly there. What I want to show you now though is this area here. Now, I've already put some white in. So what I want to do now is put some ivory. And I want some grey. This is the 273 grey. And I want to use the grey as my separation. It also creates perspective, which is rather nice. Now, on the edge, we're going to go round the corner like this and round, so we get a bit more attractive finish down there. Okay. each one of those can be very slightly different if you want them to be. And let me just show you what I mean. That's 273, and 182 also added to the equation. And now it's looking quite nice. Building yet again with our colours so that we can do some blending. Loose blending, we call this, where you don't actually blend it completely in. It creates a very attractive then finish. Now, I'm going to just turn this slightly around and make sure you see it. The reason I'm doing that is because it's the angle that I have my hand, and I can work better. Now, what I'm doing now is putting it back in again, but not solid. See? Just here and there. You get a more natural look that way. You understand what I'm saying? And it's the same as you go across here. Rather than putting a positive line on, you just put a suggested line on. And again, just there we go. See how much more natural that looks. Now, having done that, you can then take sections now with no more blending. Now we can just do these individual sections again. This is great fun. You'll enjoy this. It really is. With the pastel pencils, complete control. If you didn't like anything that you're doing, you could just rub it out. It doesn't rub out, Colin, does it? Oh yes, it does. Let me show you, folks. See, I didn't like that bit there. I'll just take it off. Isn't that clever? As it happened, I did like it, so I put it back in again. But you know, I mean, you've got, or let's say you felt that maybe you put the line too strong. Let me do that for you as well. See, now that line is maybe a bit strong. So then you go ahead with your double-ended eraser or your eraser, and you can just take it back again, put it back again. Isn't that wonderful? Now along the edge, what we want to do along the edges here is to put in a slightly stronger colour, because we're going to make the water a little lighter than this. So just come in with our grey and our ochre. That's it. Now, so that's nearly there. What I would do though, as you've got the colours, put a little bit in, a little bit of orange in maybe. You know, you can choose your own colours here. You can follow me if you like, but you don't really have to worry too much. You can put anything you want. A little bit of yellow ochre maybe in here as well, and even a little bit of brown as well, just to add texture. No, I think probably that is fine. That's great. Now I wouldn't blend it. If you felt you didn't like the fact that you got it unblended, then just push it in. But don't blend it, because it spoils it. If you do, you don't get the texture. There we are. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull back, because we've got finishing touches now. We've just got the water to do. Okay. Just before I go though, I'm just going to show you that actually looking at that, I think I'm going to just put a little bit of shading on that. That's better. Didn't mind the texture over here, but it wasn't quite so nice on the boat. Right, pull back and then the finishing touches. Right, we've already got the grey in there, so I'm just going to put some blue in. Then I'll put some white in. Now you can either rub it with your finger or you can use a colour shaper. Now, having got that far, that's got the blue, but now what we want to do is to put the other colours in. And we can, first of all, down here we've got some ochre. Remember, we're reflecting this, and we don't have to be exact here, just come down, don't have to be exact at all, and a little bit of gap like that, and then we just put a little bit more ochre, like that, and then we put the green. If I were you, I wouldn't worry about the light green, I'd just go the dark green in there. A bit of dark green in there, and then again, like that. Now, you can also add colours, a bit of orange for instance, it's nice, and a little bit of depth. I'd probably use the 283 here, rather than using the dark. Put a little bit of dark in there like that. And then use your colour shaper like that. Now, isn't that nice? We'll probably add a bit more depth. In fact, I'll do it now. Just a little more depth here because you're reflecting this down here. So I'll put a little bit more depth in. Blend. Lovely. Okay, and what about over here? We've already put some in there, but put a little bit more. And we can colour shaper again. Break it. Like that. That looks nice. I love the colour behind there. So let's put the colour in front. Wait a minute, Cole, we've got red here. Well, we need to put red in, don't we? Like that. And we've got green behind. Now we put green behind. Like that. A little bit of dark colour. Sure. A little bit of depth. Still a nice idea to leave that light, you know, like I did with the previous. A little bit of light in there. And a little bit of white. And a little bit of dark. So don't be too fussy here. And a little bit of dark as well. I think we better have a little bit of dark here, and a little bit of dark here. Colour shaper. This is what's magical, how this works. Just blend it into. There we are. Terrific. Over here we've got you don't want it solid. That's probably enough, and a bit of green down here as well. Remember, once again, that light line and a little bit of dark as well. I think just a smidgen of dark in there. Like that. Colour shaper. Water is hard to do in most mediums. Pastel pencil, as you can see, it's a lot easier. A bit of white here. Because we've got the grey on, you see, we can get away with the light colour. A little bit of dark here, a bit of blue. Sure, a bit of blue. A little bit of dark in there. Again. Don't be over ambitious when you're doing anything like this. Just take it nice and easy. And that's nice. Now we've got a red boat over here. Remember the light. And the white. And the mast. Now the mast doesn't go like that, it comes down here, like that. But all you have to do is indicate it, you don't have to put it, don't have to be too strong. A little bit of dark in there as well. And a little bit of dark. I don't think I'd use black here, I'd just use the grey. going well. Now, how about tying these boats up? They're onto a pulley, you can't see it, it's on the other side, a ring on the other side of there. At least that's my excuse. Now here we're going in. Oh, hang on, we've dropped in the water. Well, then that goes under the water, you can't see it. And this is then reflected back. This is then reflected. There's my blender. Lovely. Now, that's almost it. All we need to do really is just go back over it with just touches of tone, a little bit of extra weight here and there, but also make it colourful. In other words, let's put some ochre in. Don't just stick to the usual colours. And the other thing we can do is this, look, let me show you. We put a stronger blue. Don't go too far back, that is probably far enough. And maybe just a little bit of 181 Payne's Grey, just a touch. What would happen then, folks, if I blended that? Well, what would happen is you'd have a little ripple that's almost coming in. And then if you added to that a little bit of white, how attractive is that? But we don't stop there because we add just a little of strength on the corner, and then we'll just use your finger here. Look at that, isn't that gorgeous? Okay, let's just add a little bit more colour. And I almost hear you crying out saying, what about this lighthouse then? Isn't that reflected? Sure is. I'll show you how in a minute. It really is the last touch we're going to do. I wouldn't go too mad here if I were you. I would probably you could extend some of these, and you put maybe a little bit of ochre in there would be nice, just to make it more colourful, because that's colourful, that's what we're looking for, colour. And what about the lighthouse? Now the lighthouse, we're going to use grey, and we're coming down here now, it's about there. So what we do is we go like that. And with just a touch, because it's darker on this side, what we'll do, actually, here we are, I've got to turn this round so I can see it, otherwise we're going to end up with it being slightly off skew. That's it, and we've got a little bit of red, which is going to be like that. So, cut it across. There you are, folks. Isn't that nice? Signatures down the bottom, finished.